I saw the message while the elevator doors were closing. A single line from my family group thread bright against the dark screen. Dinner starts at 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Under it was a photo every seat filled except mine. No one had told me they'd moved Christmas without me. By the time I reached my apartment, another notification appeared. A built $25,000 for Myra's car. No greeting, no explanation, just a demand. I set my keys down, the silence tightening around me. They hadn't invited me home, but somehow they still expected me to pay. I grew up in a house where silence carried more weight than words. My father, Harold Quinn, liked to speak in short commands, never explanations. My mother, Lila, softened every edge he created, but never stepped between us. And my younger sister, Mira, lived in the spotlight he held up for her. Even as kids, she wore it easily. One winter afternoon when I was 11, I dragged an old computer tower from the garage onto the kitchen table. The casing rattled dust, lifting into the sunlight. I had no idea what I was doing. I only knew it felt like something that belonged to me. I bent over the open panel, studying the pieces as if they were a language I could learn. Harold walked in, coat still on. He didn't ask what I was building. He didn't even come closer. He glanced at the wires at me, then shook his head. "Waste of time," he said, hanging his keys on the hook. "Do something real." Behind him, Mira, 2 years younger but always 2 steps ahead, in his eyes slid onto a chair, swinging her legs. "Dad, look what I made." She held up a drawing of a horse wearing a crown. Harold smiled, ruffled her hair. "That's talent," he said. His voice never sounded like that with me. I remember touching the motherboard lightly as if my fingers could hide my embarrassment. I closed the panel quietly and carried the computer back to the garage. That day, something shifted. A quiet understanding lodged itself beneath my ribs. I wasn't the one he wanted to see succeed. When I turned 16, Myra got a used car for her birthday. I got a handshake and a reminder to be responsible. 2 months later, she scraped the entire passenger side on a concrete pillar. Harold blamed me for not teaching her to park, though I'd never been in the car with her. Myra apologized once softly, but when Dad was in the room, she let the story twist toward my carelessness. It was easier for her that way. In high school, every science fair ribbon made Lila smile. But she tucked the certificates into a drawer as if afraid someone might see them. Mira's cheer trophies lined the hallway. Guests admired them the moment they stepped inside. I learned to live in the spaces between applause. In college, when I called home to share that I'd been accepted into a cybersecurity program, Harold sighed through the phone. "So you're still chasing that?" As if ambition was a mistake. Myra's updates were different. New job offers, new celebrations, new praise. She kept me informed with a kind of polite pride, the way someone might discuss weather patterns. Never cruel, never kind, just detached. Looking back now, I realize none of it surprised me when they didn't invite me to Christmas. The pattern was older than any holiday. It was the life I had learned to survive in, but I never planned to stay in it forever. The bill arrived an hour after the Christmas photo, $25,000. The subject line was blunt, almost careless, as if the amount meant nothing to anyone sending it. A short note followed, written by my father, Harold, and copied to my mother, Lila. "And my sister, Mira. Handle this before the end of the month." No context, no greeting, just expectation. I stared at the message until the numbers blurred. Mira had crashed her car twice before minor scrapes. Kara's turns, but this was the first time they'd asked me to pay for anything that wasn't mine. And they asked on a night they hadn't invited me home. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Mira. "Just take care of it." Dad's stressed. "It's not a big deal. Not a big deal." She always used that phrase when she wanted something to disappear. I set the phone face down, the screen lighting the table in pulses. Outside, snow drifted along the balcony rail. Inside, my apartment felt too still, too clean, as if waiting for a decision I wasn't ready to name. I tried to swallow the familiar IXD, one shaped like all the years I was expected to fill the gaps. To be responsible, to be useful. They had cut me out of Christmas, yet assumed I would step quietly back in line when they needed help. A quiet part of me wanted to ignore it the way I always had. Another part, the part that had been growing quietly for years, simply paused. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through the group thread. Mira laughing at some joke. Lila holding a tray of cookies. Harold carving a roast. My seat empty. My name missing. The holiday complete without me. A knot tightened beneath my ribs, but not from sadness. Something slower, sharper. A realization settling like cold air in a quiet room. It wasn't that they forgot me. It was that they planned around my absence. I breathed in, steady, exhaled. My fingers hovered over the screen, but no reply came. Not anger, not argument, nothing. I set the phone aside. Then I opened my laptop. The moment the screen lit up, I understood something I had never let myself admit. They didn't erase me by accident, and I didn't have to stay written in pencil. I didn't move at first. The laptop screen glowed in the dark kitchen, washing the countertop in a cold, even light. Snow tapped against the balcony glass, soft and rhythmic, the kind of sound that usually eased me. Tonight, it only seemed to underline the silence. I opened my financial dashboard. Rows of numbers blinked back at me, steady and factual. Everything my family always refused to acknowledge. Years of contracts, payments, project bonuses, everything I had built on my own without them knowing, without them asking. My cursor hovered over the recent messages again. The Christmas photo. The empty seat. The car bill. Handle this before the end of the month. My father Harold always wrote like that, short-clipped, devoid of question marks. As if my life existed to patch the consequences of everyone else's choices. As if my job was simply to absorb impact. I took a slow breath and leaned closer to the screen, elbows braced on the cool countertop. When I was younger, I used to whisper. Explanations in moments like this, rehearsed reasons, excuses, anything to soften their silence. I didn't know explanations anymore. The first thing I did was pull up the bank account tied to the car loan. My name wasn't on it. Of course it wasn't. Myra's name wasn't my father's, yet somehow they'd decided the responsibility belonged to me. The cursor blinked beside the contact number. I didn't call yet. Instead, I opened a notebook and turned to a clean page. I wrote 3 lines. Car loan. Due amount $25,000, ownership. Myra plus Harold. The handwriting was steady, not angry, just precise. I turned to the next page. Christmas invite list, not included. Message sent after dinner started. I flipped the page again. Pattern, contribution, expected, presents, optional. I sat back staring at those words. They didn't sting, they clarified. For the first time, I felt the shape of the boundary, forming not in emotion but in logic. A clean cut. A necessary one. I closed the notebook. In the quiet, the apartment felt different. Less like a refuge, more like a command center. I opened the drawer beside the sink and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents I hadn't looked at in months. Partnership agreements, revenue summaries, projected valuations. All the things no one in my family had ever asked about because they never believed I had anything worth knowing. I spread them out on the table one by one, aligning edges until everything formed a neat grid. It looked like evidence. Or maybe it looked like a map where I had been and where I was going next. I didn't need revenge. I needed distance. A clean separation measured in facts, not feelings. The bank's number flashed on the screen again. I tapped it. A calm, automated voice answered. Please hold while we connect you. My fingers curled lightly around the edge of the counter. This wasn't anger. It was clarity. The kind that settled deep. The kind you felt in your spine. A human voice came next. How can I assist you? I spoke evenly. I need to report a vehicle for repossession. The owner has defaulted. The woman on the line asked for documentation. I gave her every detail tied to the loan, each one provided by my family in the forwarded bill. When she asked for my relationship to the owner, my answer came without hesitation. I'm not responsible for the loan, I said quietly, but the borrowers believe I'm still here to fix things for them. I'm not. There was a pause, the kind where an operator doesn't know if she should ask anything more. She didn't. She simply processed the request. When she confirmed the next steps, I thanked her and hung up. It felt like clicking a light switch off. Clean. Final. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled. The apartment stayed still around me, the hum of the refrigerator rising and falling like a soft breath. In the reflection on the balcony glass, I saw myself, shoulders straight, hair pulled back, eyes clear. I opened my email next. A new message from my father sat at the top. "We need you to transfer the money tonight." I didn't open it. Below it, one from Mira. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't open that either. Instead, I clicked New Email. My fingers hovered, then typed slowly, "To Harold Quinn CC, Lila Quinn, Mira Quinn subject. Regarding the car, I won't be covering the bill. This isn't my responsibility. Please handle it directly." I read it twice, not for tone, but for accuracy. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't emotional. It was simply the truth. I pressed send. The message left my outbox with a small, soft sound. A tiny click, barely audible. Yet it felt louder than anything they had said to me all year. I shut the laptop gently, the screen fading to black. The apartment returned to its quiet rhythm. I walked to the window, leaning slightly toward the glass the way I always did when thinking. Snow drifted down in slow spirals, settling on the balcony railing like dust on an old memory. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel doubt. For the first time, I felt direction. A shape of a life where I wasn't a placeholder, where I wasn't the family's quiet first responder, where I wasn't the reliable shadow. A life where I was simply me. I turned off the kitchen light. The room fell into soft darkness. Everything felt aligned. This time, I wouldn't fix what they had broken. Morning light crawled across my apartment floor, thin and colorless. I woke to the vibration of my phone, steady as a heartbeat. Messages piled up one after another, alerts, missed calls, new voicemails filling the screen before I even touched it. I didn't need to read them to know who they were from. I made coffee instead. The steam rose in slow coils, softening the sharp edges of the kitchen. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around the mug, letting the warmth settle into my palms. Only then did I pick up the phone. The first voicemail was from my father, Harold. His voice was clipped, controlled, on the verge of cracking. "Ember, call me back immediately." The second was shorter. "This is not how family behaves." The third, longer, tighter, held a strain he didn't bother masking. "There's a problem with the car. Call me now." I've deleted them without listening to the rest. A message from Mira came next. Her words rushed across the screen in a frantic stream. "What did you do?" "They came to the house. They're taking it. Dad is furious. This is your fault." I read it once, then placed the phone face down on the table. Fault. That word had followed me since childhood, lingering behind every request, every unspoken expectation, every silence. This time, it didn't land. My coffee had gone, Luke.